Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey, real quick, YouTube tells me that the majority of my views come from people who aren't subscribed to my channel. So they say that it helps to tell people to subscribe to your channel. I normally don't do that because, But hey, subscribe to my channel if you like my videos and you enjoy what I make here. It would probably help. Although I also have a lot of people tell me that they are subscribed and they have notifications turned on and my video still doesn't make it to their subscription feed. So I don't know if it matters at all if you're subscribed, but hey, if you like what I do and enjoy the videos, subscribe and like the videos, I guess. I'm sorry I asked you to do that. Let's get started. It's been a few months now since Friend of Mine, my photo book, started shipping all over the world, so huge thanks to everybody who purchased a copy of this book, but for everyone who wasn't interested in purchasing a copy or didn't get a chance to before it sold out, I wanted to make this video flipping through the book from start to finish. That way you can see all of the photos, all the sequencing, the layout choices, see the entire book in its final form without actually, holding the book in your hand. After we take a look at the book, I'll share some of my favorite photos and maybe some stories of what went into them or what was going on when I made the photos, so stick around afterwards for that. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at Friend of Mine. I hope you guys enjoyed that closer look and flip through of the book. Again, to everybody who purchased a copy of this, thank you so much. Books are still arriving at their destinations all over the world. They have been for months now. USPS has seen insane delays ever since COVID, so I appreciate all of the patience on that. Just keep an eye on your tracking number. If you try to track it, and even if it's been sitting dormant somewhere for a week, if it still says it's on its way to the destination, just hang in there, it will get to you. I've had some people reach out and, mention that their parcel is essentially stuck or something. I've talked to USPS about all of this, and they said that this sort of thing just happens, especially in high volumes. So unless it's being sent back to me or says it's been undeliverable or anything like that, just keep an eye on the tracking, and again, thank you so much for your patience. Although the vast majority of people have already received their copies, so if you've been enjoying the book, let me know in the comments down below. Yeah, thank you guys so much again for this. Also, as soon as I find the time to tackle the editing of it, you will see basically a behind the scenes of packing and shipping and signing all of the books in Minneapolis. I went there for a few days with my assistant Nathan and stayed at our friend Kevin's house, who helped me with this book, and we went through the whole process of getting this thing out there ourselves. So I'm super excited for you guys to see that, but it is a lot of footage. I'm dealing with a couple terabytes of footage to sort through and just put together on top of all of my other stuff. So as soon as I can get to it and get it finished, that will be up. Again, super excited for you guys to see it. Now, as for some of my favorite photos in the book, I have a couple that have a little bit better stories than others, so I might lean towards those, but I will be sure to mention some of my favorites, actually including the very first photo you see before you even see the title page. This photo wasn't even in the first edition of the book when I did a little like trade paperback through Blurb way back in 2014. This is the second edition because as I've said before in other videos, maybe you haven't seen those though, this was basically to change everything about my first edition that I wasn't happy with. Primarily just the overall quality of the book, but also the work inside, the sequencing, the photo choices. I took out some photos, added some new ones, and this is actually a photo that wasn't even in the first edition of the book, but it was made during that time. All of the photos that weren't in the first edition that are in the second edition are basically from that same time period. So none of this is new work that was made after the first edition was published. It's all from that time period because Chillicothe has changed so much that I wanted to keep it from that specific period. And this is a photo I made down in the river around that time, and for whatever reason I never really gravitated towards it, and so I completely looked over it. But when I went to basically make the second edition, I went through all of my film from that time frame, from 2013 to 2014, and I came across this photo here, and I really enjoyed it. And it just felt like the distance in the composition there, as it kind of wraps around the water edge there, leading you to the smokestack off in the distance. I really like this photo, and it felt like a good way to give the viewer a sense of a preview of what they were about to look through in the book. It was a good sort of teaser for the book. Kevin was the one who actually asked me if there were any photos that I felt would be good for that, because that was something I hadn't considered in my initial edit. And as soon as he mentioned that, this photo just kind of popped off the wall, and I was like, that just feels right. That feels like a good way to start the book off. And as I was kind of going through the sequencing of the book, I wanted to kind of feel like you were going through some of the drives and walks I would take when I was shooting these photos. I would start kind of off in the countryside where I live and then make my way into town and kind of weaving in and out of downtown and some of the more rural landscape that's around here that I really love to shoot. And it's been funny to have friends passing through town, and I'll kind of drive them around where I made some of these photos, and people are often pretty surprised at how many photos were made within like a 2-mile radius. I mean, I've been going down the same roads for years, taking photos of honestly a lot of the same stuff, and a lot of it is very close to home. Anytime someone tells me what their favorite photo is, this is always one of the most popular ones. This photo is actually also used for a record cover for the band Come Wind. Super good band, definitely check them out. There's actually an old video on the channel of me shooting photos with those guys. A lot of like Polaroids and stuff like that. It was super fun. But this place here is actually not even there anymore. I think maybe a year after I shot the photo, they completely leveled the house, all of the structures on the property. It's all completely gone now. The road closed with the smokestack there. That's always a popular one with people, especially around here. It was just a crazy stormy day. The sky was super dark, and I think I had an orange filter on my M6 at the time. This was probably, yeah, this was actually, I remember now, this was made with the Voigtlander Color Scope R, little 35 f2.5 lens. That was my first lens for my M6 because that was essentially all I could afford to shoot with. And it was a great lens though. Still to this day, that's a solid option. But I think I had an orange filter on that, and I was shooting Tri-X. So Tri-X, orange filter, I wasn't pushing my film. I didn't really feel like I needed to with Tri-X, but I definitely like the contrast. The guy lighting his little Swisher Sweet, he rolled up on this bike that is leaning up against this building here. This is the bank building downtown, which is actually now 50 West Brewing, and super good beer and burger spot if you're ever passing through town. But it used to be a bank, and I was sitting there on one of the benches across from this guy. He rolled up, took his hat off, put it on the handlebars of the bike, and then sat down and lit up a cigar before he went in there. And initially, I had the two photos paired side by side, as you obviously would, and Kevin was like, why don't you just do a blank page on the left? You see him lighting the cigar, and then you turn the page, and that's where you see him with his head down with the cigar lit up in the air. And I think pairing that with his bike there as he was kind of waiting before he went into the bank, that to me just felt like a better way to sequence things as opposed to what I had done in the past. And a lot of these buildings have changed so much since then. That's one thing that, you know, after I made these photos, Chillicothe just started rapidly changing. And it was kind of hard for me to shoot because I wasn't that inspired to shoot yet. I felt like I had said everything I needed to say at that point about Chillicothe, or at least kind of showing Chillicothe and like how I felt about it. Now it's gone through such a change, and I've changed how I like to shoot so much that I think possibly I'm starting a new series, sort of like following up after this, but with the 4x5. I made a couple photos yesterday or the day before, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen the photos yet, but as I was shooting it, it kind of just felt like I was getting into a different groove of working in Chillicothe and trying to like document it how it is right now. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. But it's interesting looking through some of the photos, even photos I made. It already just feels like this is a different town. It kind of feels like it's a different photographer's work in a way, which is really bizarre because it's my hometown and I love it. I feel like this photo might not be the strongest, but it's one of my favorites in the book. It's this guy with his kid and then that guy's dad on the far end there. And presumably that's 3 generations there at the tractor pull at the fairgrounds, which is a staple in our area. I didn't always think of this as a book as I was shooting things, but it came to a point after I realized all the photos that kind of went together and had a similar narrative. I started thinking of like, well, what else can I add to that? And shooting at the county fair was one of those things that immediately stood out to me, but I didn't just want to shoot like the Ferris wheel and the lights, you know. After all, this is Tri-X and not Cinestill. Shooting the tractor pull just felt much more Ross County, Ohio to me, rather than, you know, shooting all of the other stuff. And focusing a little bit more on family felt a little bit better than just shooting photos of sort of the generic fair stuff. I feel like that's probably one of my favorites in the book, even though it rarely ever comes up. Another one we had fun with was this photo of these 2 women stepping across 2nd Street, kind of in the same posture, same white head of hair, and I initially had it paired with this photo of the reflectors on the gate there for the train tracks. I love the way the light from my headlights was just really making those reflectors pop, and it kind of mirrors the 2 white heads of hair side by side. And I had the 2 photos, you know, in the same spread as a diptych like that before, and then Kevin again was like, why don't you do something where you put it on the back side so that way as you turn the page, your mind is still kind of thinking about that kind of shape. You know, you're seeing these 2 sort of white spots, and as you flip the page back and forth, you kind of see, you know, that similar shape, and it stands out in a different way as opposed to just putting them side by side. Probably would have never thought to do that, and that's one of my favorite things we did with changing up the sequencing and stuff like that through working with Kevin, so super hyped we did that. This lady was a lot of fun. We were sitting at Krispy Kreme Donuts downtown. Krispy Kreme with a C, not Krispy Kreme with a K that you see at gas stations. There's a big difference. Don't ever let anybody tell you any different. I was sitting there with her. This was like where I would always go to get coffee and sort of recharge as I was walking around. And I would sit down there mostly with a bunch of old timers, and I would just sit there and talk with them. And this lady was telling me all about her deadbeat son-in-law. Those were her words, not mine. And she was just gossiping and just telling me all about it, and she was so sassy and had so much to say. It was really rad, but I basically had my camera kind of in front of me, and I would just basically set the focus, and as we were talking I would shoot the photo in advance. And you know, I shot a handful of photos, but I really like this one because of her expression there. She was super fun, super sassy. But yeah, I rarely ever shoot like that. I did back then a little bit more, but I haven't in a long time. But some of the photos in here like that, it feels different for me, but I'm happy that some of the few faces in the book, I'm happy they're in there. This spread is probably my favorite in the book. I really like the shapes in each of these and the textures in both of them, and I feel like they make a good pair. They're completely unrelated and made in completely different times and everything, but they just made a good fit for me, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit. The left side here, this interior of the house, I really liked the light in here. That's like really what drew me to it, but I ended up really liking the textures and the shapes from the composition there and sort of the frame of the interior. And then this woman right here, this was outside of a little flea market, thrift store kind of thing. They had all of these like display tables set out, you know, with people selling all of these vintage toys and stuff like that. And this stuff was a lot of stuff from her kind of era of being a kid. And so she was, you know, I have no idea who this lady was, but, you know, we didn't know each other. We were just talking as we were there, and she was talking about how she hadn't seen so many of those since she was a kid, and she was just so, like, taken back by all of that. And that's, like, the gesture she's making with, you know, her hand there on her chest, and you can barely see the smile on her face. I shot this photo in a similar way where I was sort of just zone focusing and shooting as we were talking. And this one ended up cutting off basically at the edge of her glasses, where all you can really see, you can't see her eyes or anything, you can just see that sort of smile that she has. It was a photo I really liked right off the bat, but pairing it side by side with this one, I love that she's on the very edge of the frame, even being cut off, similar to the door on the right side here, and then that one piece of light that's on the wall that's kind of going up into the frame. I really like how that kind of mirrors her hand as she's making that gesture there. And they're two very different kinds of photos, but I love sort of the similarities in that, and the textures of the paint fading and chipping away on the interiors, and then the wrinkles and spots on the skin. I just really liked the pair of these two together. Of course, we've got plenty of the smokestack throughout the book. This photo here, for whatever reason, while we were in Minneapolis, I went to Alex Soth's studio to meet him, give him a copy of the book, and we ended up sitting and talking for an hour, and it was incredible. I'm gonna try and include as much of that as I can in the video, the upcoming video where I show the whole behind the scenes of the trip. Alec was super kind and gracious to give us that much time and a tour of the place. Even gave me a book, which was really cool. But for whatever reason, this was the photo that he really liked, and that stood out to him the most. He said he really liked this photo. Didn't say much else about it. Take it for what it's worth. Just thought that would be fun to include, because that probably wouldn't be what I would expect, I guess, for him to pick as sort of the photo that stood out a lot. So just thought that was interesting. But I'd say that pretty much does it for sort of my thoughts on the book and some of the different things that went into the sequencing and stuff like that. I hope it was, you know, helpful and informative for you if you're looking to do something like this with your own project. This was a really daunting task to make this book and get it out there and ship it and distribute it all ourselves, but I'm very thankful we did. We learned a ton, and I hope this little mini documentary behind the scenes, I hope it gives you, you know, even more insight into what something like this really looks like behind the scenes. But yeah, thank you guys so much, everyone who purchased a copy of the book. It means the world. If you want to see any of these photos, you can always do that at my website. There is a gallery up for that, which is a perfect Well, it was going to be a perfect segue until I fumbled my words. It's a perfect segue because our sponsor today is Squarespace. I've personally been using Squarespace for my own website for about 7 years now, way before they ever decided to sponsor my YouTube channel, because they are the best all-in-one platform to build a website. For anything you want to do, whether it's your gallery portfolio or a place for people to reach out and contact you, or a blog or a newsletter, you could even sell a product with an online store like I did with my book. All of that is built right into Squarespace. They have so many different templates to choose from, and it's incredibly easy to use and customize to fit your own style. But if you ever need help with anything, they have 24/7 award-winning customer service. If you need to build a website, I don't think it's ever been more affordable or easy to do with Squarespace. So if you want to try it out for yourself, you can do so entirely free at squarespace.com. But when you're ready to get signed up, go to squarespace.com/MattDay, and that'll get you 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, for supporting this book and this project. It means the world. If you have any questions or comments at all, leave them in the comments down below. But that's it for today. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.